Hello everybody, this is Charles Ross. I'm the service hydrologist at the National Weather Service office in State College with a seasonal flood outlook for central Pennsylvania updated on Friday, February 19th. There are several factors that we consider for winter and spring flooding. We'll go through these one by one. The first factor we'll look at for flood potential is our recent precipitation. We'll categorize that as close to average over the last month. We've had an active weather pattern with several storm systems crossing the area in the form of rain and snow. Let's look at the observed precipitation and some of the departures. This is the National Weather Service Enhanced Data Display webpage. It's available at preview.weather.gov/EDD. And from this page, you can see a variety of weather data. Let's look at precipitation data across the area. If you click on the More Layers button, then you'll head down on the tabs down here and you'll see observations. If we look at the last 30 days of precipitation, you can click this here and center your legend. You get a good idea how much precipitation has fallen. And from this, you can see our heaviest totals have been closest to the Maryland border, where we've seen over 4 inches. As you work your way north up closer to the New York border, totals are substantially less, generally in the 2 to 3 inch range as we get closer to the New York border. Comparing this to average, you can move down here. You can see your precipitation percent of normal for the last 30 days. You'll see the wettest conditions have been closest to the Maryland border. And let's get our legend fixed here. And you'll see totals substantially above average down here. Whereas you work to the north, you'll see below average totals in the headwaters of the Allegheny and some of the west branch of the Susquehanna River as well. Next, we'll look at snow conditions across the region, which we'll categorize as below average. This winter, our northern mountains and higher elevations have seen some of the lowest snow totals on record. And as we sit here in mid-February, we're looking at a snowpack that just has very little water in it. It's quite unusual for this time of year. The storm we had across our southern counties last month, most of that snow is melted. There's still some snow left, but expect that to be melting here in the next couple weeks. And in general, our snow conditions are well below average for this time of year. We'll look at a couple websites here and take a closer look. First, we'll look at snow depths. Going back to our EDD page, if you go to the winter tab here, and if you go down to snow depth, you can see our current snow depths across the area. Let's get the legend on here. If you display the legend, you can see even though it is snow covered across our northern counties and some of our higher elevations, these depths are quite low for this time of year, certainly below average, where we're looking at general 5 to 10 inch, maybe some 10 to 15 inch snowpacks across our far northern counties. But again, quite below average for this time of year, even though most of the area does have a little bit of snow on the ground right now. Looking at the National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center's webpage, we'll look at their snow analysis to see how much water is in the pack. We zoom in over the Allegheny and Pennsylvania region. If we click snow water equivalent, you can look here and you can see in general we're looking at 1 to maybe some 2 inch totals of snow water equivalent across our northern zones and some of our southern areas as well. We still have snow from the blizzard last month and some other storms that have moved across the area. In general, this is considered below average for this time of year. And finally, looking at the Middle Atlantic River Forecast Center's snow page, you can look at their snow water equivalent map to get a basin or an idea basin by basin of what is in their snow model right now. So if we look at the headwaters up here of the west branch of the Susquehanna, you'll see quite low values, generally 1 inch of water in some of the headwaters and even less as you move down the basin. So again, definitely a low snowpack for the middle of February. Next, we'll talk about river ice conditions, which are also below average for this time of year. We do have some ice on the west branch and main stem of the Susquehanna River, but it is rather spotty and most of the channels are open right now. The reason for this winter, we've just had fluctuating temperatures all winter long. Certainly, we've had some cold episodes, but they've generally been brief, preceded and followed by general warm temperatures as well. It's just really not made a favorable condition for ice formation this year. So, in general, we think the chance of river ice flooding is pretty low for the remainder of the winter. I will show you our regional ice webpage so that you can get an idea where to look for information. Here's the National Weather Service State College webpage. This is our main page. If you go to weather.gov/state college, this is what you'll find. You'll see our tabs here. If you go to local programs, then if you go down to the third to the bottom link right now, it's called River Ice. If you click that, you'll be able to see reports from our river observers across the region. These observers regularly send us reports of what they see on whatever streams and rivers they live near. And you can click on this, for example, and see a report from Perry County that was issued a couple weeks ago, but we generally update these as conditions warrant and don't have a lot of reports this year since it just hasn't been a very conducive year for river ice. Next, we'll look at stream flow conditions across the region. This is an important condition for near-term and medium-term flooding, as the higher water levels are going into any event, the better your chance of flooding. And with the recent rainfall and snowmelt we've had over the last couple weeks, we have seen increased streamflow levels across the region. So for that matter, we'll categorize this as above average right now. Let's look at the conditions here closer. To look at stream flows, we'll go to the USGS website. It's called waterwatch.usgs.gov. And from here, we can click on current stream flow. Then let's hone in on Pennsylvania. Then we'll zoom in and we'll get a good look at what current stream flows are across the state. You can move your mouse over any of the gauges and get information on the gauges. And if you look, you'll see a lot of greens and a lot of light blues here. And the greens are normal, the light blues are above normal. In general, you'll see that stream flows are generally flowing pretty good for this time of year. In eastern Pennsylvania, you'll even see some much above normal stream flows. So this is a good signal that we have a lot of water moving through our system right now. Any heavy rainfall events under these conditions could produce a better chance of flooding. Next, we'll talk about soil moisture conditions, which we categorize as near average right now. Since we're still in the middle of winter, most of the ground across the region is frozen, and soil moisture conditions are not as important a factor in flooding right now. But as we head to spring and through the next couple months, as we start to green up, the soil moisture conditions become more important as we move through time. Here's the climate prediction soil moisture charts. What I like to look at, if you go to the anomaly part of the web page here, and if you click on daily, you can see where the current anomalies are for soil moisture. And you'll see if you look around Pennsylvania, most of the area is in the normal range. It's a little bit above average across close to the Maryland border here, and far western Pennsylvania is a little drier than average right now. But for the most part, soil moisture conditions are pretty close to average across the region. For long-term drought monitoring, we can look at the Palmer Index. And similarly to the soil moisture anomalies, you can see most of the region is in the near normal category, with the exception being down here across south central Pennsylvania, close to the Maryland border, where it's slightly above average, or what would be considered unusually moist spill at the moment. Now we'll talk about groundwater conditions, which are also close to average for this time of year. Let's look at the USGS groundwater map. If you go to pa.water.usgs.gov/drought, you go to the Pennsylvania drought monitoring page. If you click on the groundwater link here, you'll be able to see that all the counties across the area are currently in the normal or above category at the moment. And reservoir conditions are another factor that we look at for winter and spring flooding. And at this moment, all the storage levels are pretty close to where they should be for this time of year. We'll take a look here at the Baltimore District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers webpage. Looking at the water resources section of their webpage, you'll get a map of the basin across the region. And if you'll look, the triangles are reservoirs, and they're all green across our area, reporting normal conditions. You can zoom in and look at the West Branch of the Susquehanna, get a closer look at some of the reservoirs, which are major factors in preventing floods across the areas. These can hold an awful lot of water and can prevent flooding downstream. At this point, all the reservoirs look real good right now. Finally, the last factor we'll talk about is future weather forecasts. Probably the most important factor that we look at, as most of our flooding here in Pennsylvania is driven by weather, heavy rainfall events. We're looking at an active weather pattern to continue with several storm systems over the next week. At this point, don't expect any of them to produce heavy enough rain, and some of them may even produce snow. So, the future weather forecasts are not too conducive to flooding in the short term, but certainly something we'll continue to watch through time and urge everybody to continue to monitor their local weather forecasts. We'll look at a couple web pages real quick. First, we'll look at the National Weather Service State College web page. Weather.gov/State College will get you there. And from here, we have a variety of tabs where you can get weather and hydrology information. And if you click on the map here, you can zoom in to get our current forecast. For example, if we clicked on State College, you can click here and get an update on what current conditions are and what the forecast is. It's a good resource to have to monitor weather forecasts. The National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center is another useful website to monitor weather conditions. One thing we like to look at is their rainfall forecast. And if you click QPF down here, and if we look at the 7-day totals right here, you can get an idea what the forecast over the next 7 days is for rainfall. And right now here in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, we are under an active weather pattern, but precipitation totals look to be generally in the inch range or maybe less, maybe a little heavier over far eastern Pennsylvania, a little lighter over northwest Pennsylvania. But in general, this should not be enough rainfall to cause any flooding. And we'll look at the Climate Prediction Center webpage also, which gives a variety of forecasts, generally in the medium and long range. If you look at the 8 to 14 day temperature profile, you'll see here that most of the East Coast is progged to be a little bit higher chances of being below average temperatures over the next week to 10 days, warmer in the West. Looking at the rainfall forecast, you'll see that generally as we head into time, while the next week looks active, perhaps after that it becomes a little better chance of less active precipitation chances as we move through time. The 1 month outlook just came out yesterday, and as they've been saying, for most of the winter, it looks like the northern half of the United States has the best chances of being above average in temperatures in March. Rainfall totals show the better chance for above average rainfall will be south of the area. 3 month outlook pretty similar. The northern tier of the United States looks like a better chance of being warmer than average, while the heaviest precipitation chances or above average chances will be across the south. And to summarize our flood outlook, we characterize our chances as average right now. The winter snowpack is much below average, and it's a minor player, not expected to be a real big reason for any flooding at the moment. The recent precipitation has certainly raised stream flows. With these elevated stream flows, we'll continue to see a little bit higher risk for spring flooding if we do get heavy rains. Ice is pretty minimal across the area, so the ice jam flood potential is pretty low right now. So in general, our flooding really depends on the weather right now. And if we do get heavy rains with the elevated stream flows, we could see some minor flooding. But right now, the current weather forecast certainly looks favorable, at least for the next week. Continue to monitor weather conditions across the area, and things can change quickly. So always look at the latest forecast. Thanks a lot for listening to this. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.